Right. Well, welcome to GovChats, Georgia's open, no pressure space where government innovations across country share what's working and what's not and what's next. And whether it's a bold AI pilot, digital services wins, or a lessons learned the hard way, GovChats is where we get real, get inspired, and get better. So let's get into this. I am Nikhil Deshpande. I'm the Chief Digital and AI Officer with the state of Georgia. And this conversation is really special for me because this really kind of sits at the cross section of digital services and AI. For years, state websites have relied on information architecture, structured navigation, complex menus, and keyword searches to help people find what they're looking for. The goal really was to serve constituents as quickly as possible and let them just move on. They don't need to know how government was organized. But as of 2022, we are in a post-search era where constituents don't really truly need to know even what they're looking for. They just need to ask a question, stating their need, and boom, they're expecting to get a straight answer. So today we are diving into Ask Indiana. Uh, the country is one of the very first portal-wide generative AI chatbot deployed to surface content across I'm guessing probably hundreds of thousands of pages and also hundreds and thousands of documents if I know better for any state entity and websites to have. So it's truly changing the way residents interact with government websites and forcing a way to rethink of traditional content management best practices. And we are so lucky to be joined by Graig Lubsen, the Director of Digital Experience and External Affairs. Greg is with the Indiana Office of Technology. So let's jump right into the story behind this project. We all want to know what the model choices were, what the governance frictions was, if there was any surprising lessons from this rollout, and what it truly means for the future of how we run digital government. So without any further ado, welcome, Greg. And if you can just walk us into how this project came along, what was the beginning of it, who initiated it, and how did you all realize this was the right time to do this?
Well, Nikhil, first of all, thank you for inviting me onto the program. You and I have known each other for years, meeting at national conferences around the country, and certainly from afar that I've been watching the state of Georgia and sort of their digital experience team for years. I've actually been on your email list for a long time, sort of just cyber stalking what you guys are doing because it is one of the nation's leading programs.
Thank you.
I was one of the orchard testers. I know that's been gone for a little while, but every now and
Thank
then I
you.
would actually take a test just to see what you're asking. Because one of the things that we're always doing is asking citizens their opinions through focus groups. That's something we've been doing for closing in on a decade, where we're hosting this. So asking their opinions, but it's seeing what other people are asking of their end users and the citizens is certainly of interest to me. One of the things that we're so focused on in Indiana is improving that citizen experience, that digital experience to get people as quickly as possible to the information they're seeking. So we've been really looking at that for I've been with the Office of Technology for just about a dozen years as of 3 days from now. Um, and so that's been a huge focus of mine is improving what we provide to citizens. And that has certainly changed over the time I've been here as we've evolved and looked at how do we do information and how do we break down those silos of government. As you said, we shouldn't expect citizens to understand government. So how do we help solve that for them? And that's one of the ways that we've moved from search being that primary function into using a generative AI chatbot to help find that info.
Yeah, that's truly something which we applaud because we rolled out our chatbot in late, I want to say 2023, early 24 when we started seeing some traction because our internal native search percentage had really gone down. And um, initially we had an old school chatbot, the way you kind of add all the answers and then hope for the questions to have just the keywords to start pulling in the answers from. And we really were not getting much traction. And once we moved to an AI chatbot, we truly saw that people were liking what they were seeing and our traffic went way up. So I think, we would love to know from you, Greg, like what was the trigger to, from a technology perspective as well, to land on the technology that you all chose? Because I know there are other states at this point who are looking to do the same thing, and we have so many options. The other part also is that when we are looking at Gen AI conversations, immediately the frame of reference for a lot of people is ChatGPT. And with that comes along the topic of hallucinations. So maybe if you could just kind of frame the conversation in a way that, like, how did you keep your chatbot just to the whatever the amount of pages that you all fed to train it, and the documents, and how did you all manage the interaction, making sure that it stayed within those constraints?
Yeah, Nikhil, you just asked about 10 questions. So that means I get to choose how I'm going to answer.
Feel free to.
But going backwards, as you pointed out, we also had originally a chatbot on there, and we were, when we deployed it, and I don't remember how long ago it was, but what it does was pulled from our FAQs. So we've got a sort of a global FAQ system that agencies were supplying. We sort of urged them, hey, at least have 10 of those FAQs on your site, but they were pooled together in a single system. So if you searched through our search appliance, you would
Mhm.
get FAQ results. So that was one way to sort of feed into that beyond your traditional Google search, which was pulling in info from the pages. We also then deployed a chatbot, which was lower down on our page, but it was there that users could click down, but you'd have to scroll a little bit to get to it. And that chatbot, it was a Gen 1, Gen 2. It was really focused on FAQs, but if you couldn't get an answer out of that, you could transition to a live agent during business hours. That worked okay, but like you pointed out, similar, we didn't get a ton of traction from it. It was good that we were able to reuse existing content to plug into these tools, and that's something that we've really worked on with our agencies is let's work smarter, not harder. But with Gen AI, we saw an opportunity to really reevaluate our search procedures and our chatbot all in one. And it did take some careful work. We are actually using OpenAI chatbot, so the makers of ChatGPT, but we did evaluate several different products to look at before we sort of went down the path we ended up going on. But testing was a huge part of what we needed to do because we had to get buy-in because you can't have hallucinations. We've seen other instances of a chatbot at a local level, but a prominent one that was suggesting to citizens, here's how to break the law to get around some of the regulations that exist. And so we're very mindful of that. And one of the things we wanted to really be sure of is the content is only pulling from in.gov. So we want to limit that. But we even actually narrowed that down a bit more. One of the really great program progress we've made as a state is we have a central content management system
Mhm.
with 625 different or 626 websites. 386 of those are state government, and the remainder are local government. So we actually do host local government websites at no cost to them as part of our most recent in.gov contract. But we didn't want to pull in information from local governments. So if you're asking, hey, when is the next council meeting? That could be pulling from 200 plus websites. And we knew that that wouldn't be really a great experience for people. So we excluded local government, focused only on state websites, and we excluded Indiana code. So we're not pulling in any Indiana code there. A couple things we wanted to avoid. One, I mentioned, okay, confusing council meetings. Two, we don't want any legal interpretations. And then sort of the general look is if we confine it to state government websites, we're not going to have any opinions or external sources that are maybe conflicting with the official government message.
So approaching cross-agency collaboration truly is looks like was a challenge. So maybe for states looking to do the same thing that you all have done, like maybe if you could shine some light on what were some of those approaches that you took in creating that collaboration, especially aggregating all of that content together and making sure there is no versioning or there are no different conflicting information pieces floating around.
Yeah, and certainly we're just like every other state. There's agency silos that exist. There is no perfect way to ensure that you have up-to-date content on all the sites. At least
Hmm.
we haven't found a way to do that.
Hmm.
Um, eh, but we do sort of try to make sure agencies are focused on cross-posting to other agencies if they can, if they're subject matter experts. For example, cybersecurity falls across my agency, the Indiana Office of Technology, but the Indiana Department of Homeland Security. And then we also have a more centralized cybersecurity hub, in.gov/cybersecurity. And so we've got to make sure that those three entities are making sure that their information is basically in sync or worse, not out of date, which I feel is worse. Bad information that's old is, I think, more dangerous than maybe adding in some confusion of slightly different versions of information. Uh, but the chatbot really does pull from all of those sources. And one of the really key things that has buy-in from our users,
Hmm.
internal users, was the citations. So in the chatbot, it does provide citations so the user can go and click into the actual page or document that it's pulling from. And that's another sort of powerful feature of what we're doing is it's not only pulling from the pages, but it's also PDFs, Word documents, PowerPoints, Excel, all of those other ancillary items that exist that are hundreds of thousands of artifacts across the websites is that sort of information. And when we started rolling this out, we have a really strong IN.gov Advisory Council, which is made up of agency webmasters, communication folks. That covers more than half of the state agencies. Indiana, if you see one state, you've seen one state and state government. Indiana's got about 100 agencies. I have no clue how many agencies Georgia has. But on our advisory council, we've got about 50 of those agencies
Okay.
participating. So a pretty broad swath, and at least the larger ones
Hmm.
are all have a presence. And so we did work with them on the testing. They were a major component of the testing. And we let them know, hey, we are pulling from all of these documents and all of these websites, and we need you to test and test again and test a third time. And then we reminded them, as we have done for a long time, a website is not an archive. So if you are done with that document, it needs to go. If you need to retain it somewhere, there's proper mechanisms to do that. We connected them with the Indiana Archives Records Administration, which is our retention agency, and said, here, go learn about how you can maintain these at moving forward. If not, it's time to delete it. We don't need the storage space there as well, but also we don't need potentially bad information or old information that is going to end up confusing people. And one of the things that we also emphasized is a search engine can find these documents just as easily as a chatbot. So Google, Bing are already crawling these things. It's not just the Ask Indiana bot that is surfacing these results. So bad data here is still bad data over here, and on how citizens are trying to find that information. So it was sort of beneficial as well as a cleanup project, one that is always going to be ongoing for sure. Um, but getting those agencies to really go through that process. And to talk through the testing, that was a question you asked a bit ago when you asked me those dozen questions, is how do we do this? How do we go about this? And the first things is we worked with our vendor, Tyler Technologies or Tyler, Indiana, and they've been a really great partner with the state of Indiana for more than 20 years. And so we said, okay, well, we're ready for the next generation of citizen engagement. And so Ask Indiana was certainly a part of that side of the house and one that we're talking about today, but there's other aspects we're working towards too. But we challenged them, okay, we know ChatGPT is out there, ChatGPT is out there. What other systems are there? Because it was pretty clear just the way it rocked the technology world that this was something that could revolutionize how citizens interacted with government. So we wanted to take a look at that. And we said, okay, look at these technologies that are out there. And we created a baseline of 50 questions that are frequently asked on IN.gov as our baseline and said, okay, let's ask these various engines the same question, and then we're going to grade the results and sort of see which one we felt the most comfortable with, which mix of technologies we're going to use, and ended up using Bing as our search engine, ChatGPT as sort of that driving force. And then there's a Tyler Technologies layer as well, the resident assistant that sits on top of all of that to pull that information and present it in a cohesive way. And once we had that sort of testing criteria just for, okay, sanity check, are we hallucinating? Are we getting information that is seemingly accurate? Then we kicked into IoT is doing some testing. And so our team really hammered it home, looking at bias, hallucinations. We tried to trick it as much as we could, what we call adversarial testing. We also asked informational testing to double check the layers. And even before we launched, so we launched in beta in June of 24, and then moved to production April 22nd of this year. During that entire process, we had months leading into that. We actually had 3 under the hood upgrades to our GPT, and we'd redo that testing, the 50 baseline questions, the adversarial testing, and our testing as an agency, the technology agency. That's just before we involve any of the agency teams on that testing. And so I talked about the IN.gov advisory group. We said, hey, go test this. They have been great partners. We use them as we look at any of our sort of enterprise tools that we're going to deploy. So our content management system, search engine, analytics features, we bounce all of those off of these end users to get their feedback. So like any of those, we did that with them. We also then targeted IT directors. So we've got a monthly meeting with IT directors already established. And so we really broadcast this, and IT people, they like tinkering. So they were really into trying to test it, again, trick it. And that's the biggest fun is I think trying to trick this thing and trip it up. They really wanted to do that. But we went a step further. So that's usually where our realm is, webmasters, IT directors. I also was communications director for the Office of Technology, recently changed roles a little bit. So we had communication directors from agencies as well do some testing on this, because they're going to be the sort of point people for receiving any criticism or questions from agencies on that. And then we went a step further and included legal counsel, because we're nervous. Again, I go back to that city that had a chatbot advising how to break the law. That's top of mind for us. And so we wanted lawyers to be able to ask questions as well and really frame it. And we had some really like unique situations, like how long of a length of a barrel a gun could be used in a particular hunting season. And we had to sort of refine it and get it so it was providing that right answer. A similar motor vehicles issue where it was like, hey, we're 95% of the way there, but we need to just sort of correct that. And one of the things we try to do is we don't want to hard code answers like
Mhm.
you used to have to do on version one, version two of a chatbot, like
Yeah.
that you were doing and I was doing with FAQs. We don't want to do that. We
Right.
want it to be sort of a free flowing and train it on the answers versus say, this is how you must answer. Because if you ask the question slightly differently, it might just default to that hard coded answer and not be correct. And so we had IT people, we had webmasters, communication folks, legal teams all review it. And that's when we went into beta
Mhm.
after that. So lots of stages. And then we did actually user testing. So we did online focus groups with citizens asking them, hey, try this out. Here's some specific tasks that we'd like you to do. Here's open-ended things that we want to hear your feedback on. And we went through all of that. We then created sort of a go live document that said, here's all of the sort of tasks we want to achieve before we go from beta into production. And so we worked through that. And like I said, we went into beta in June of last year and production just in April of this year. So we had a pretty long time frame to sort of see how the system works, see how it operated, how were individuals using it. And you could get to it on in.gov. It used to be search was the very first item. And right
Mhm.
under that search bar, we had a little bar that said, hey, try our beta Ask Indiana. We had a disclaimer you had to go through before you went into it. Um, and so it was a little bit hidden from main users, but it had some traction. But then we, on April 22nd, we actually launched our full new site design and you made the Ask Indiana bot the default search engine, if you will. And we sort of flip flopped it. Now you can go to traditional search underneath, but Ask Indiana is that top layer of how people are interacting. And that has certainly changed what we've seen users doing on the site.
Yeah. No, that's quite significant. I noticed that when I was looking at your website, and I was wondering what results you are seeing as far as like the overall behavior was concerned. But thank you for walking us through the exhaustive process of your testing and, you know, around getting all the teams together. Something that I'm interested in is how are you all continuing to test for bias and hallucinations? Because as we all know, just testing prior to deployment or within the beta stage is great and once it's deployed, but obviously we have to make sure that, that there is no drift and the models are behaving the way they are. So what is y'all's plan on making sure on an ongoing basis you're testing for bias and hallucinations?
Yeah, we do have the Tyler technology teams, and we've got Tyler Indiana and then Tyler corporate. So both
Okay.
of those teams were engaged on this project and continue to do that testing. And then we every time we do an upgrade behind the scenes to the new GPT version, we redo the layers of testing of those baseline questions, Tyler Indiana adversarial questions. Um, and one of the things that we certainly were not perfect. We noticed in one of those iterations, we forgot to hit a checkbox that restricted it to in.gov. So I'm asking adversarial questions. I'm like, hey, which state is better, Michigan or Indiana? I'm going to pick on my neighbors. And it started like chopping out a whole lot of facts about the state of Michigan and Indiana. And I'm like, why does it know this about Michigan? One, it shouldn't be having an opinion, and it kind of played it neutral. But why does it know all this? And so we had to catch that, and so we put that back into our process. Okay, we have to make sure that checkbox gets configured. But so Tyler Technologies, Tyler Indiana, and my office, Indiana Office of Technology, all do those sort of testing ahead of any launches just to make sure we're maintaining a neutral bot.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really important. Um, you mentioned that now that this is your predominant offering to for constituents to interact with the information on in.gov. And I believe, like you all mentioned, that you saw some 10% reduction in homepage time consumed in overall, I guess, visits as well. So, from a statistics perspective, like how much of an impact are you all seeing having this chatbot enabled?
Yeah, and it certainly user behavior has shifted, and I did not have a hypothesis on how it was going to be. So I was really eager to sort of see it. And now that we're 2 months in, I reran some numbers this morning to kind of take a comparison, looking at April 22nd, 2024 through June 23rd, 2024, and then same time period this year, just to see, okay, what is it like? And search was by far historically the most used service on the site. People come to the people get to content first via Google, second maybe via your search engine, and
Hmm.
then Bing or other search engines that are out there. But I think it is in that order. They're not going to type in a direct URL, and even if they do, it's probably in the Chrome bar or Safari bar. Or if they're like, hey, ga.gov, in.gov, let's go there. Searches that first use thing. So we were averaging 500,000 searches a month, thereabouts previously. In that time period, April 22nd, 2024 through June 23rd, 2024, we had more than 1 million searches on our just homepage. Not even accounting, we have search on every single web page we
Hmm.
have in our content management system. So excluding all of those, just homepage, more than 1 million searches. Same time frame this year, we dropped down to, and I'm going to look at my paper to get that, 113,314 searches.
Okay.
And so searches pretty reduced. And chats, though, I would have expected basically a one-to-one replacement, and it is not. We've had
Hmm.
188,000 questions asked to Ask Indiana. And so you combine those numbers, we're seeing a 71% decrease in questions to our homepage or Ask Indiana bot. And that's a 2 month sample. So we're getting pretty significant there. I am not a math major, and I'll be honest, I was not expecting to think about math when I started my day. Um, but it's a change. And so you talked about sort of the reduction in time spent on site. So the homepage, we've seen, reran the numbers again, a 1 second decrease in average time on the homepage. So not much. It was 10 seconds last week. So maybe people are just sitting on our homepage trying things out. But our overall site, again, we've got sort of an enterprise roll up of a view of our analytics. Having them in a single content management system really helps with that. Is we've seen a 59-second reduction in time spent on in.gov. And I think that is the indicator that I'm using with my overall goal of getting people to the information they need as fast as
Hmm.
possible so they can go back to living their lives.
Hmm.
An interaction with government usually isn't one that's done with pleasantly. There's some compelling reason that you need to go there and you want to get your info and get out. We're not a commercial shop. We're not trying to keep you on our site
Right.
and lure you in. So I'm always saying, let's get you to where you need to go as quickly as possible. So a 59-second reduction in time spent on in.gov as a whole over that same 2 month period, I think is a huge win.
Yeah.
Certainly something interesting to me is the reduction in number of questions. So I think hypothesis is now that Ask Indiana is getting people more quickly to the information they're seeking. Part of that is because it's pulling citations from so many different sources, and in that combined answer, it's giving you multiple sites in the same answer and then letting you click through.
That's fascinating. And I just love how we are seeing that people are also catching on to a lot of these changes, and it's changing the way they interact. And I'm pretty sure that you all are seeing the kind of interactions that the bot's having with people. Have you seen anything that stands out to you in a way that the bot solved someone's problem that earlier where like, you just put in a search and it spits out, maybe a result or a series of links to it, and then they have to decide, right? I mean, over here, it's more like more opinionated, but also people can actually have a conversation. Did anything stand out to you as an example where you're saying like, oh, wait, this is the value of a Gen AI solution?
Yeah, it really is. It's been great to get people to where they're going. The citations number astounded me. The bot search, I think, would use logic that says this is a frequently accessed page, so we're going to surface it more frequently. The bot has less, and I'll give it some personality here, less cares about what other people are doing. And we've actually cited more than 500,000 pieces of content in answers to people. The Tyler, Indiana, or Tyler Technologies backend into the analytics is really useful in unearthing some of these sort of interactions. But the ability to sort of broadcast 500,000 different sources on state government website in
Mhm.
its answers, and again 188,000 questions, and so you're averaging 2.5 citations per answer, and
Yeah.
so that's not something you're going to really, yeah, it happens in a traditional search but not in a really reasonable way. One of the things I explained to people at least a year ago was a GPT or any generative AI chatbot is a search engine that puts a conversational tone around its search results. And that's what this is. But it really has changed the way that the people are interacting because it generates them in a more logical, people first
Yeah.
way of generating these search results versus line by line with maybe a snippet of information that you're like, oh, this could be what I'm seeking. Click, nope, back button,
Mm.
no. The way it presents that information in that paragraph format with the links at the very bottom, but it provides sort of expository method of what's behind this link. And I think that's what's helping drive more accurate traffic.
Yeah. And also builds trust because, like, once they see the source and the fact that you're still within the domain, absolutely. The other part of having a solution like this, which I really like, is we immediately can have a multilingual access point
Right.
for our constituents. For the longest time, specifically for states such as yours and ours, we are seeing a lot of folks with multilingual needs interacting with us. And for the longest time, it was a challenge to manually be able to serve them. So I read about your implementation. I saw that you all now have support for 61 languages. That is quite phenomenal. Can you tell us more about like how you plan for that?
Yeah, actually, and that's one of the, I was surprised when we did that and I started testing. I'm like, oh, let me just test this language. And it came back native response. And I'm like, wait, what? And for I think about a decade, we've had Google Translate on all of our sites. So
Mhm.
it allowed somebody, if they needed to, you can go to the bottom and click translate into, it was more than 200 languages. And we still have that available on our site. Um, but this was different because of the large language model. It is already has that capability built in. And you cited the 61 different languages. That's actually just what was been used on our site.
Yeah.
I don't actually know what the full capacity is of languages that the LLM can use or Ask Indiana can converse in, but it's full conversations. So you can just start in your native language and then continue. The answers come back there, and you can continue. And the nice thing about the bot in general, not just tied to languages, it understands, at least conceptually, this is a conversation, so it's going to reference previous questions or answers in the
Mhm.
next response. So it knows, okay, I'm staying in this language. But 61 languages have been used thus far with our bot, which really surprised me at the scale of it. English is about 95% of the interactions, which again, that's lower than I would have expected. I would have
Mhm.
thought 97, 98%
Mhm.
English. And so we're just seeing such a broad use there that just frankly, I can't say enough, surprised me. Spanish wasn't even second language used. When I took sort of a cursory look about a week ago, Spanish was fifth or sixth
Mm.
most frequently used language. It's now up to third as of this morning over the course of the 2 month period. But German, Portuguese, French for all there. Indiana's got a really large, diverse population. You might not think that, but a lot of different languages used here. So I guess I wasn't surprised at, hey, we've got a lot of languages. I was surprised, 95% English. And that, again, I didn't even expect the bot to do translations. So
Yeah.
huge.
That is huge. Absolutely. What are the plans in making sure that those languages are indeed being responded, like the bots actually being relevant and translating it and giving answers? Because a lot of those languages we are not familiar with, so we can't really quality test it. Have you all thought about like what you or how you're planning on doing like confidence levels and the test? Is there any way for constituents to respond if they don't get an expected like blank from a translation perspective?
Yeah, so we do have a feedback mechanism that is pretty well used. One is, okay, thumbs up, thumbs down. But beyond that, you can provide context of what you're asking. And that back end sort of analytics allows us to go see what was the conversation, what's the context, to
Mhm.
allow us to say, okay, yeah, that's a legitimate criticism, or no, you just weren't happy with the answer.
Yeah,
It's the right
yeah.
answer. And so we can sort of discount that. And overall feedback has been about 60-40 positive. And again, that 40%, there's a huge chunk of people just trying to mess with the numbers. So we've actually put in a request to allow us to say, mark this as just take it out of these results with Tyler Technologies to be able to sort of get a better grasp of those numbers versus sort of manually going through. Um, yeah, but we do need to think through a process. I don't speak any other languages, so I am not the best tester for that. But we've got some of our webmasters and other on the advisory council that we can turn to. But we've got to figure out a great way to be able to pull that. It's certainly a gap right now in our service.
That's great though. I mean, but you're already serving in 61 languages. I mean, that's phenomenal. To be truly honest, like I would not have thought 61. Even for like more diverse states. But yeah, we are seeing the same thing, and we are also planning on ramping up exactly, the multilingual support. So, you all have truly been one of the early states in rolling this out. Just looking back, right? I mean, what do you see as like some of the hurdles that you all had to kind of go through, be it technical, cultural, legal, um, and if you were to redo something, what would you do different?
Yeah, great question. The biggest hurdle, and luckily we've learned this lesson before, stakeholder involvement, uh, getting them buying in on a new technology was certainly that, and gaining their confidence in the ability of the tool to be able to provide an accurate answer without putting Indiana in the news. Again, communications person here, I only want to be doing positive news releases and not having to answer why did the chatbot say XYZ, which is illegal or very controversial. And so that rigorous testing process and being inclusive of a lot of different stakeholders and getting their buy-ins was really the hugest hurdle. I mean, sure, you're dealing with a new technology, so that's immediately sort of this. And GPT, what is transformational in how people are interacting with computers and in information and data. So not only is it just a leap for government, it's a leap for everybody in how you're dealing with things. So there's that technical hurdle, there's that cultural hurdle of, okay, government isn't always necessarily on the forefront. And I'm not saying Indiana is on the forefront of GPT. I mean, we waited a year for it to sort of settle. So we weren't going first. I think Georgia actually had a GPT bot first. And we've had a couple instances of a very specific program, GPT bot, but going across a portal of 386 websites, that was, I think, first in the country to really do that with such a broad base of knowledge. So there's that cultural hurdle of breaking down silos and crossing over everything, and then that legal one. And so all of those things come together. We're like, okay, how do we do this? And how do we have all these meetings? And so we had a bunch of different meetings where we explained how does it work? What do we want you to be testing? And also try your best to break this. That's what we want. We don't want to be not ready for prime time. And we've had a few other states, not Georgia, but come and ask us, okay, how'd you do this? We spent like hours trying to trick it and fool your bot, and we couldn't. So that was another Midwestern state, and we had another one as well. And so we've been able to have these conversations just like we're doing today, and talk through the technical nature of what did we do, how did we get buy-in,
Mhm.
and so far again successful. Hope to continue that. We've got certainly more work to do though.
That's a great start, and I think definitely more states and more organizations can learn from that. So what's next? You mentioned in the previous conversation or if the previous version of the bot that it would connect to live agents. Is this something that this bot does already, or is that something that's on your roadmap? How do you connect the bot with live agents and in general, like what's on your roadmap?
Yeah, so the live agents is certainly on our roadmap. Our old bot could do that, but what we've got a centralized contact center through Genesis cloud provider, and
Hmm.
so that's got its own bot. So we're trying to figure out how do we do a handoff
Hmm.
if the chatbot's not really getting the right answer, needs some nuance, or a customer needs very specific assistance that you're not going to find specifically on a website. How do we do that handoff? And so I think we've got approximately 30 agencies using that contact center solution. And so we're in the early stages of having those conversations. But from the get go, that was always on our roadmap from launch date. We've been thinking through that. How do we make that a possibility? Because computer knowledge is only going to take you so far. You need to have that human understanding and being able to have the nuance to understand the tones of the questions, and the complexity is still far beyond what GPT can do. So one, we've got that. Two, we're working on very agency specific bots to really streamline the support and decipher some very unique lines of questioning, like some of our licensing items can be very tricky. And so we're looking forward over the next 12 to 18 months to really be able to to do that, to complete transactions online, not just get information, but to move into the I want to ask questions about this, and then I want to finish this transaction and have that bot be able to do that. So that's the next 12 months where we're looking.
Okay, well that's significant because that's truly then adding value where someone doesn't have to wait in line for their specific case because there's the initial level of having just asking a question, getting an answer, that's great. But when it actually starts helping through cases, I think that's really where, we'll start seeing the value of the bots and in general AI. So as we are wrapping this, Greg, hopefully other organizations, states, munis who are tuned in, what would be your advice to them as far as starting this project, going through this project? I know you talked a lot about like the challenges and the wins, but if you were to just kind of in a nutshell advise them, what would that advice be?
Yeah, absolutely. One, you need to find the right partner that is able to write good prompts and is experienced in developing those that promote guardrails across that are necessary for government. You need to have those so you're not pulling from just random spots. Three, find agencies that are optimistic about the technology and want to do it. You've got to have a willing partner. Four, find the skeptics to test against those optimistic people. And it may not be within that agency. So you've got to be able to tap across different verticals or silos and use them to really help out and push you. The skeptics, the greasy wheel, the sticky wheel, I should say, are the ones that prevent you from making huge mistakes. But you've got to have people that are excited to move forward at the same time. So again, one, get a really good partner that knows how to do the prompting. That's probably not going to exist in state government. Two, make sure that you're really controlling the flow of information in there. Three, find your optimists, the people that really want to move forward with this, that are excited to implement it. And then find those people that are like, I don't know about this, and get them on your side in terms of testing and really batting it hard to make sure you're comfortable with what you're going to deliver to your constituents.
Absolutely. You need all of them. Takes a village. Well, Greg, thank you so much for sharing the story behind Ask Indiana, the generative AI chatbot that's just not improving service delivery, but also reimagining how constituents interact with government. From better accessibility to faster answers to a collaborative cross-agency approach, Indiana truly has done a great job of offering a model of AI done right within the public sector. Thank you everyone for watching GovChats. Be sure to subscribe, share, and join us next time as we spotlight more leaders building the future of government.